All right, true peace, everybody. Talk Kenny Ununupu, and we're here again with a part two of the Bible interpretations, book one, part two. So we're going to continue to read through that and bring out what's necessarily needed so our people can get on one accord. Last night, I forgot to add that the Bible interpretation was very specific. It said that the information in those books is what all black people gotta agree on to get out of the spells they're in. And we know that everything been tried outside of these books has not worked. Not religion, not these subgroups, not the cults and other cults and self-proclaimed leaders and the list goes on and on and on. So none of that stuff is going to work because they don't understand the negative side of 6 ether to 3 ether and the powerful forces that exist at this time. Black people's most vulnerable state is because we're at the bottom of the human races, that a lot of those forces don't manifest themselves to us in order to keep us docile. And we the key and the leaders of the human races. Anything we set in stone, everybody follows it like they did in the past. But because we're at the bottom, we still trendsetters, but because we're surrounded by our enemy, they take advantage of us so it doesn't look like we are as powerful as we used to be. So the information have to first be done first correctly in the mind, and then we'll go from there. So without further ado, Manu, take it away.
Can you share with the verses that we supposed to read, so I can start with reading that, and then I'll share my screen. Actually, no, it was that the next question was the Adam and Eve question.
Yes, that's it. Who were Adam and Eve by race and religion?
All right, says A. Who were Adam and Eve by race and religion? Adam and Eve were Hindu, East Indian, and their religion was Hinduism. We understand that name plurality is a key to understanding the Bible. Adam was not one man, but a branch of the Hindu people. The female of that branch is called Eve in the Bible. Adam and Eve were the first men and women of this world, meaning the first people of the moon cycle. That is, the first people converted to the moon god's way of life, an ancient name of the moon and the moon god's sin. The moon cycle, the sin cycle, began approximately 6,000 years ago. There were millions of people of other races on planet Earth when Adam and Eve were ousted from the Garden of Eden, Africa and Asia, and sent to the Aegean Islands. All right, so this is a very important. Well, all the information in the Bible interpretation is very layered. Though it may seem like it's just sentences, these things are very powerful. It's very powerful as far as opening up the minds of the people. Reason being is because a spell is basically a fabricated truth. And what I mean by fabricated truth is something that has truth to it, but the underlying principle and the foundation of it is falsehood, right? So Adam and Eve, though they were technically a people, it was actually a group of people. And the Bible uses, as Afrunu said, name plurality, right? So a group of people is actually known now as as one person, right? So we're gonna use a little bit of technology in helping us narrow this particular process down to find out who these groups of people were, and see if ChatGPT can help us in any kind of way in narrowing these groups of people down. Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen of a chat conversation between me and ChatGPT about narrowing down who Adam and Eve was. So I said to ChatGPT, I said, according to the nature books, Adam and Eve were groups of Hindu priests and nuns. Could you locate and identify these priests and nuns 6,000 years ago and what they were called? Right? So I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's a long conversation, because ChatGPT will take you in a whirlwind if you allow it to. All right. Yeah. So it says, according to the Bible Interpretations, Book 1, the figures called Adam and Eve in the biblical record are not literal first humans, but symbolic names for two collective orders of Hindu religious functionaries from roughly 6,000 years ago. Adam represented a group of Hindu priests, and Eve represented a group of Hindu nuns. They were functioning religious orders within the Indo-Aryan priestly caste system of that time, not individual people. Their garden setting was a coded reference to their controlled temple domains, and the so-called serpent episode in Genesis was part of a symbolic account describing cultural and religious shifts, not a literal event. If you like, I'll trace the exact Sanskrit and historical names used for these priests and nuns groups in ancient Hindu society as they would have been identified in that time period. This would connect the Nupu decoding to the archaeological and Vedic records. Then I said yes, because I want to know who these priests and nuns were called, right? Says, based on decoding the Bible Interpretations, Booklet 1, the biblical Adam and Eve were symbolic names for two specific groups in the Indo-Aryan system around 6,000 years ago. Adam, a collective order of Hindu priests historically known in Sanskrit as the Brahmana class, the ritual specialists, custodians of Vedic hymns, and officiants of sacrificial rites. Eve, a collective order of Hindu nuns corresponding to the female ascetic and monastic orders within the Sanyasini or Brahmavadini traditions, women who renounce worldly life to study and live under strict Vedic discipline. The garden in Genesis was a coded reference to this sacred precincts and temple domain lifestyle, not a literal orchid. And the serpent episode was an allegorical account of cultural, religious turning point, not a zoological event. I can also cross map these priests and nuns orders into the SMAC cycle framework so you can see their exact functional placement in lawful order of that era. Would you like me to do that? Now, here's the thing. With ChatGPT, you got to be very specific, right? So as you're doing the research, right, you also got to cross-reference the nature books as well, right? So there were many different priests and nuns in 6,000 years ago in that Hindu culture. So there was a specific group of priests and nuns that were sworn to celibacy, right? So I'm jumping ahead a little bit here because as we read further in the Bible Interpretations, we will see that Adam and Eve, the importance of who they were was because they were bound to celibacy laws, right? So because I know that, I had to go dig a little deeper. So I said, were these Brahmana priests sworn to celibacy? And it says not necessarily. In the Vedic period about 6,000 years ago, the Brahmana priestly class was not uniformly sworn to celibacy. Their role was to maintain and transmit ritual and sacred knowledge, and many of them lived as married households. So the married households were called the grahas. It looked like it says grahastha, the grahastha. If I'm sorry if I'm butchering it, I don't really know Sanskrit in that kind of way. So, bear with me as I try to pronounce these words. All right, so the married households were called the grahastha while still performing priestly duties. So mind you, these are not the ones that are sworn to celibacy. Okay, so celibacy, which means brahmacharya in Sanskrit, was specifically required during the student stage of life. The brahmacharya asrama and was permanent only for certain renunciant orders. Full lifelong celibacy was more characteristic of ascetic specialists such as sannyasins and some Rishi type seers, rather than the general Brahmana community. So if Adam in the Nupu decoding refers to the broader Brahmana order, they were not a celibate brotherhood in the absolute sense, but a priestly caste in which some members chose permanent celibacy while others married and maintained families. If you want, I can separate out which specific Brahmana suborders of that era were bound to celibacy, so you can see exactly which ones could match the Adam type more closely. Then I said, yes, separate the nuns who were forbidden to have sexual intercourse. So it says now, under the Vedic era, social and religious framework, the female ascetic groups. So ascetic, I know you keep seeing that word. Ascetic means that those that are strict and disciplined in what they do. Okay, so that's what that word ascetic means. All right, so the female ascetic groups that match the Eve designation in the Nupu decoding and were explicitly forbidden sexual intercourse would have been the Brahmavadini, which are the women dedicated to lifelong Vedic study and teaching, took vows of Brahmacharya. So remember, Brahmacharya is the celibacy for life. You understand what I'm saying? So these specific women were not supposed to have sex. They are just sworn to this for the rest of their life. Okay? Lived in a monastic style ashrams or under the guidance of elder gurus. Completely abstained from marriage and sexual activity. So now we know who these women are, right? So these women were the Brahmavadini, right? So the Sannyasini, the female counterpart to the Sannyasin renouncers, entered the Sannyasa ashrama renunciant stage either directly or after widowhood. Took irrevocable vows of celibacy, poverty, and detachment from family life. Their lifestyle was inherent and in secluded monastic communities. All right. Then there's the Tapasvini, female aesthetics devoted to severe tapas, often associated with forest hermitages, required sexual abstinence as part of their austerity discipline. Right, so you got three groups of women here that were sworn to celibacy. Okay, so in the 6,000 year Indo-Aryan religious context, these groups would have formed the Eve symbolic counterpart to the Adam Brahma priests, representing the celibate female dedicated orders within the same overarching ritual and theological system. If you want, I can detail which male Brahmana. These days get you tongue tied, man. Brahmana suborders of same period were fully celibate. So you can see the parallelism between Adam and Eve in this decoding. Then I said, yes, please. For the male Brahmana side, the Adam in the Nupu decoding, the fully celibate suborders in the Indo-Aryan system around 6,000 years ago were the Nastika Brahmachari. which were the perpetual students who remained in the Brahmacharya Ashrama, which is the celibate stage for life, dedicated entirely to study, teaching, ritual without entering marriage, lived under guru supervision or in celibate monastic communities. Then the other group of people was called the Sannyasin, renounced all worldly life, including marriage and property, took sannyasa diksha, which is you renunciate vows that permanently prohibited sexual activity, often wandered as merchants or lived in secluded asramas. And then the third group were called the Vana Prastha Rishi, which were the celibate forest sages, right? Although Vana Prastha, forest dweller, could be entered after family life, some chose early entry without ever marrying, lived in remote hermitages, engaged in Vedic recitation, meditation, and austerities, maintained absolute sexual abstinence as part of their vow. These groups stood apart from the married Grahastha Brahmas. Remember, those were the ones that are married. The Grahastha Brahmanas, by taking lifelong vows of celibacy. They formed the functional male part to the Eve nuns, which the Eve nuns were the Brahmavasdinis, the Sannyasinis, and the Tapa Vinis. And then it asks me if you like, I can map these celibate Adam and Eve groups directly to the SMAT circle 6 East. I just ignored that because sometimes the chat GPT will ask to do things you don't want it to do. You understand what I'm saying? I'm gonna stop there real quick, just to see what the other Noonie Boos may have to say or add on to that.
You wanted to comment, Nebu?
I mean, it just break down mainly who Adam and Eve really were, and that also coincide with the kind of story that York laid out when he had Adam as being a Hindu race, and Eve being part of the Havila race, which was Ethiopian. He was trying to combine them together. So instead of him going in his story, breaking down how Adam and Eve were both two different groups of East Indians, he just tried to combine African culture with Hindu culture, which is what they are doing as Nuwaubians. Well, the Sabians. Yeah, that's mainly all I have to say about that.
You had one out. Repeat that last part after you said he was combining Hindu culture with African culture.
I was saying he was combining Hindu culture with African culture, and that's what the Sabians are doing as of now in their cult.
All right. I wanted to add something in.
I know you would. That's what I said.
I want to add something into this
equation.
Hold on. I'm trying to.
As you prepare yourself for that, just want to let the people know this is part of breaking the spell. This is the truth behind where your religious teachings come from.
Yeah.
Right? And they come from various cultures, right? One of them being the Hindu culture, right? But then they would mix certain stories together because the Bible is what we would call in Noon the universal Book of the Dead, right? So the Universal Book of the Dead means it took from many different cultures. So some of these stories will come from the Vedic text. Some will come from Kemet in the ancient Book of the Dead, and some will come from the Sumerian, ancient Sumerian. Some will come from various places, because the Bible is the universal book of the dead. That because it takes from many different stories and it compiles itself into these books and repackage it to you as the African specifically, because the African is the one that absorbs the most knowledge because of the melanin that we possess. That's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day, for us to understand that the melanin that we possess allows us to what? Attract the most knowledge. And what is knowledge? Knowledge is basically particles that come in the form of information. Each particle that exists in nature has its own set of information. The same way how you would have a bit in a computer. You know, they'll give you a bit in a computer and they will call it a bit of information, right? So each bit will have a whole lot of information. It's the same thing like the particles in nature. The particles in nature contains a whole lot of information, and our brains are the processors of that information, right? So as the particles come into contact with us, our brains filter this information and then we repackage it back out as knowledge or ignorance, depending on which direction that you want to go. Okay? All right. So Tar, you ready?
Yeah, but I wanted to show where me and you dealt with this this topic a couple of times already. Because YouTube was deleting some of my YouTube joints because of the information.
Yeah, bring it back. Bring it back.
Videos is allowed to stay on YouTube. That's what a lot of people don't understand. So when you see some of them overseas, they do the number because it fits either deception and tricking black people about what really is going on. So we are not we're not just sitting here attacking them. We are responding after the deception, saying, and that we're not here just saying these things out of nowhere. It is a war between, as they say, good and evil, but it's also a war between correct information and incorrect information, and I just wanted to put that on. Hold on, let me go to my profile first, and then I'm gonna show y'all something. Hold on. And this other one was that me and Anu did, and it's called The Origin of the Caucasian Race, Part 1 and Part 2. Sorry about that. Let me see, because I usually and I'm glad that I used to date my videos. My big channel, the Tarnoon Nubahu joint, and I had did one on the BIA book 1, Part 1 through 3, and we were dropping a lot of information.
That was 2017.
Yeah, that was 2017 when we did this.
Jeez, that was 8 years ago. I feel old.
Look at Nebo. Look at Nebo. We got Nebo right there at the bottom. We got his picture, and he was doing videos.
You look like 16 right there, man.
Locks was just blowing.
It's on him. I'm gonna find it when I double back. That's what I'm gonna do. Just give me a second.
8 years ago, that's crazy.
And these are different things that coach don't understand. That we have to break it up. Like I said, this is a problem that York created for his followers that's still going now because they're still around, and they're still lying, that we have to deal with this. Now look at the date. This is November the 8th.
This is 10. That's 10 years ago.
This is 10 years ago. We've been dealing with this. Now I said, inquire from the Nuwapians, did Eve from 6,000 years ago convert Adam's power, semen, for the benefit of his race is mentioned in the Holy Tablets, chapter 10. They will say yes, but Halal, the Vulcan spark-eared devil, tricked their children. However, since the Nuwapians believe York wrote the Bible interpretation, book 1 said Adam and Eve, look, a group of 6,000 years ago was manipulated by Leviathan, the giant sex force that made Eve trick the Adam group. So which one is true? So we're not going to deal with that per se. But this is who they said Eve was, an individual. Now we're reading from the Bible interpretation, and it clearly states as a group.
Yeah.
Right.
And not only that, it's three groups into one.
Right. So this and ChatGPT didn't exist 10 years ago. It didn't exist in the 60s. Afro said this as Amenhotep Rakhapatar in 67. He said Adam and Eve was a group. ChatGPT is not that old, and it just went and found the historical evidence that it was priests and nuns and they all was the same. Now this is a problem for Nuwapians and Sabians because this is Adam and he looked like York. So he said this is a Hindu, right? And you can see the hair. I told y'all York took this picture from Vampire in Brooklyn with Eddie Murphy. His face in there. And I'm gonna show you that. Because you know we are the only ones that can show y'all what a lie is in the flesh, and that whole cult. Because and the only reason why it's standing around is because of the writings of Afro Unu and the nature books and the Bible interpretation and those writings, and you'll use those writings and mix them up with a lot of stuff, which is what a lot of cults do. So I'm finna share so y'all see the picture, right? The regular picture. All right, hold on, I'm gonna go back. So now I'm gonna share my screen real quick. So you see that's Adam in the middle. So I'm gonna share this real quick, then I'm gonna jump back over there. Now you tell me it ain't the same picture. It's the same picture. This spirit being foolishness, playing games with our people's intelligence. All right, so but York made a lot of those pictures look like him because he wanted to be the center of everything. All right, so now we know from the Bible interpretation that Afro Unu under Amenhotep Rakhapatar said it was a group. York comes in and then mixes Sumerian deities and somebody from Star Trek, which you can see Spock right here. The point it is, and he created a black version of it. So the followers of York have a serious problem of copying and pasting and plagiarizing and mixing this stuff. York to tell them the same story 20 times and say they all are correct.
Worshiping York as a god? thought he was thinking about giving you what you want.
Remember,
His whole mission was to take y'all from religion to control y'all. In order so y'all can call him the God of this time.
how was it
The nature doctrine that y'all gonna get in a full blast in a couple of years. Listen to what I'm telling you. What y'all are in right now is religion. This is religion that you're in right now. When you have when you're worshiping York as a god, y'all don't worship y'all. Y'all don't call y'all God. Are you a god? We are all gods. Are you a god? No. Listen, you talking about. Y'all, where's that picture where they say York is our god? That clip, right? The mass having a beat telling y'all I'm your god. We're not all supreme beings. We're not all supreme beings. Well, for what supreme God? What's the one supreme being? That's right, absolute nature. That's right. So white people come from the all too. What are you saying? That's right. But y'all are learning that now. This has been taught all the way back in '95. Y'all need to stop it. Y'all need to stop it. Now they talking about the hydro picky. We knew about the hydro picky since '95. York is now telling y'all this 20 years later. This symbol, I promise you, in the next couple of years, y'all gonna be wearing this. You got it on camera? I guarantee y'all gonna be wearing this.
I guarantee you. Thousands of years before you even knew about
In your newest book, you got our word noon in it. In your newest book, you got our word noon in it. N-O-O-N-E.
We don't understand this.
What's the hour? Why is it our word? Let's be one day.
Let's be one thing. Okay, listen. Already in Africa. That's a fact, right?
I give you that.
That means that it's not your word. It's the African word.
So York could just come around stealing and say he's the God that brought it forth. If Noon existed before York put it out there, why is he the one that's getting the credit for bringing it forth?
It's been out.
Listen, so why he didn't say I took the Wapu from this person? In letters, York said I am not the one that wrote the Bible interpretations or the novel. He said that I am not the one that did that.
Okay, check this out. The information already exists within us.
I totally agree with you.
Okay, so we're saying the same.
I totally agree. But don't sit here and say York is the one that's bringing forth the information. No.
He's from Africa.
No.
He goes for the sun.
No, he's not from Africa. He's from Boston.
Get it together,
He's
people.
from Massachusetts. All his paperwork.
Get it together.
Paperwork he signed for the. My fault. Yo, listen. Paperwork he signed for the Tamaray. He tells you at the bottom, I was born in Boston, Massachusetts. He put the video up. The video is up. So why would you sign documents saying you're from Boston, Massachusetts?
You guys
It's
are
an
so
error.
brainwashed. Come on, it's an era. Come on, Barry Blast.
Yes, let's get back to
This
that.
is so funny. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Black people.